when somebody says, send me some information, that is the number one blow off answer.
Hmm.
And so Chuck just covered a lot of ground about how, like, he did two things. One is he gave a scenario, right? Well, here's a little different scenario when you go into a retail store, but it's kind of the same thing where you give the blow off answer, like, I'm just looking.
Hmm.
So if we go back to, and what I did here is I this guy painted himself into a corner. When so often when the typical blow off answer is, hey, just send me some information, and I agree. When about what? So if you, like Chuck said, what do you want to? I'd say this in a little different words. I go, well, what do you want information on? Because we just had a conversation about all kinds of stuff. However, if that's what they say, then you didn't have the right conversation. So what you need to do, what we've found that works a lot better is that, and it typically this happens in a presentation. Hey, blah, 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 present. And they go, just send me some info. All they want to do is get you the hell off the phone or off the property or whatever the case is. Just send me some info. It's the number one. And so most often, though, the person that just painted themselves in a corner thinks that, oh, send me some information. It's better than what could have happened. Slam the door in their face, hang up the phone, pull a gun on them. It's better than all those things. So they go,
Probably.
oh, send me some information. Sounds encouraging. It's not. It's absolutely not encouraging. It's just better than getting hung up on or a gun drawn on you. Better than that. So what we want to do is we want to have a different conversation so that you don't end up painted in a corner thinking that you're not. How many times, Chuck, you're on a training call and somebody goes, well, I ended, here's the situation. And you go, well, how'd you get there?
Hmm. Hmm.
And how they describe themselves getting there is something we would not have done.
Right.
You go, okay, well, I see how you got there. Well, I would say walk over the paint.
Yeah.
Just you're gonna have to
Yeah.
walk over the paint, or you didn't do it right. And so now what do? Sometimes you've blown your opportunity,
Right.
and we scream this 4-letter word next. Look, you
Yeah.
spun it, you screwed it up. You know what? On to the next one. Let's do it differently this
Yeah.
time.
Learn
Let's
from it
have a
and move
different
on. But
learn
if
from
you're,
it and
I'm sorry about that.
well, and so then, well, your conversation isn't a, hey, you know what, I just want to have 5 minutes of your time.
Hmm.
That's the worst intro I've ever heard in my
Right.
life, because no, I'm not giving you that. If you want to pay me $1,000, I'll listen to what you have for a couple minutes. Other than that, you can't have my time. That's not going to happen. So let's assume most people don't have the whatever's to say that.
Right.
But instead, this is often where a presentation leads you. Send me some information because you didn't have a conversation. If you have a conversation that says, hey, how'd you get into this business? How this, how that, whatever the case is, and you're gathering information, not just waiting to speak. You're gathering information, going, oh, okay, well, what about this? What about that? How about this? How about that? Where are you trying to go? What are you trying to achieve? How do you see this working now? How do you see it in the future? Oh, okay, you're getting a real picture of where it is that they want to go. It doesn't matter what you're selling, tie downs. If I could, would you? Right, all along the way, and right, and Chuck will go into tie downs next, and
I,
that's you're seeking all along here in your conversation, like these are places everywhere all along the way you're seeking you're seeking agreement on key issues, and
hmm.
therefore you go on to the next. Oh, I see. What about this? Okay, so if we could get you that and that achieve that, that would make sense for you. Okay,
Hmm.
okay. So it's strategic. You're not
Hmm.
presenting. Presentations are not very strategic. It's just like a one-sided script,
Right.
or it's like, imagine a play where only one person only one person knows their lines and everybody else doesn't.
Right.
And you're trying to think that they understand the story and they're trying to play along. It doesn't work. So you've got to be in tune. If you want to do this, like we do this for freedom, right? A lot of people just do it for jobs. They don't like their job anyway. So how much passion are they going to put into learning their craft? Probably not much. But if we're doing this to build freedom, what we want to do is really understand how communication works, and
Right.
where I am in this process and how it feels and what's the likelihood of we're getting business given how well I'm doing and where I'm going, and am I using tie downs, and you just don't find yourself here very often at all when this is the conversation that you're controlling. and you're tying down, and
Right.
you're really, you're good at this. So so if so you're just not going to get that very often at all. Most people get it a lot
Right.
and think it's a good thing, and we find it like, okay, if I get to that point, then I didn't do something quite
Something's
right, or I'm
missed.
talking to the
Yeah.
wrong person, or I didn't have the right conversation, because I probably wouldn't have gotten to that point
Right.
if I'm talking to the right person, having the right conversation, and
And
tying down, like Chuck's saying.
and the tie downs, and I love the with how the zigzag, because that's how sales processes go. They zigzag, and
Yeah,
you're here, you're here, you're here. You're always seeking agreement. You're always seeking agreement, and I've it works if you do all these little. Because like a lot of these questions are interesting because people will come in with one thing they're really struggling with, and they don't understand that the butterfly effect is involved here. It's not this part necessarily you're struggling with. It's something else you're doing prior to this point that already sets this on a bad course for you. So you got to kind of, it's like a perfect recipe. It's kind of, you got to do everything along the way perfectly. And then you don't get that stuff. It just very rarely, it's a
yeah.
feeble attempt for them to act like they're resisting because they don't want to be easy. But then when you just kind of roll over it, they go, okay, because you've done the job so well, I'm just going to move forward with you. So it's
Yeah, it's
there's a lot
usually like
involved with it.
Chuck said, you get that because it's something you did way prior or didn't do, and
Yeah.
this is almost always the answer.
Yep.
Yeah, you
100%.
just didn't, you presented rather than asked,
Mm-hmm.
or discovered along the way, and had this conversation where you're asking questions and having tie downs along the way, and you're really seeking to understand what they're
Right.
looking for, and you're seeking agreement on key issues along the way that moves you forward in the conversation. If you get to here and you're going, well, let's say you ask what the time frame is, and they say 6 months from now, depending on what you're selling, you go, okay, well, I'm not even going to do this other stuff,
Yes.
and
Cut bait
I'm not
right
even
there.
going any further. Yeah,
Cut
I'm
bait.
stopping right here. And they go, well, send me some information. You know what, let's do this. How about, and we talk right before, and of course we'll get a hold of them well before that date, but we're just not going forward. And now there are times when by design you're just sending out information, and that's your design. It's not in a sales process.
Right.
It's in a more of a connecting a massive referral network process, where your objective is just to get the information out. They give you their email address, or whatever the case is. So that's what we're looking for. And it's a very short and sweet conversation. Hey, just touching base. We do da 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 da. You know, just wanted to get some information out. What's your best email address? Okay, good. I'll send it out. Touch base with you next week. And that's when then you have your conversation. But it's a very, but you still have a mini one of these. You're not going to send it out to somebody who's not going to be feel like a good target. You're still
Right.
going to have a couple conversations, very quick conversation, seeking agreement on key issues. Like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Good. I'll send it out. Follow up
Mm-hmm.
for the next week. Da 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 da. And then you do follow up by design, but it's our design,
Right.
not because it didn't go right, but it's the two-step sequence in what we're doing. That's when we do it on purpose. And then and they're relieved, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
when they go, oh, or that's me, sorry, or that's the salesperson caught in the corner because they did the wrong thing. But the recipient, when you go, hey, I'll just want to get you some information, they're going, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
And then you do have a little bit of, you have this little conversation, and they're happy to get off the phone. Then they get the information. You can have the conversation next time. Make sense? So I know that's a different question than
Mhm.
you asked, Ian, but
Yeah.
but
But it all.
but sometimes, because I don't want people to think that we never send out information. We do it when it's our game, when we're playing in
Mm-hmm.
our field and it's by our design. We'll send information. Otherwise, almost never do we
Mhm.
send information. And also, like when somebody goes, oh, well, I'll send you a request for proposal. We don't do those either. We absolutely do not. We've done it a couple times, and we find that not worth doing. So that's also, they don't even know it. They don't know what they're asking. They just go, I don't know. There's a little group of them sitting around in the conference room one day, and they go, well, why don't we ask them this? Let's ask them that. I think that I've heard this from other people. We should ask them that. They don't even know what they're asking. And so because we know that other people in our industry are going to get this and are going to manipulate the answers.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm not even playing that game. I'm not even playing it.
I'm
Like
lost.
if they just keep on saying, like, yes, maybe we're interested. I don't know, maybe, that looks good, but you're trying to force a yes or no.
Well, if you're trying to
Well, yeah.
force something, you're probably dead in the water already. You know what I mean? You try, if you do all the things that we just talked about with the tie downs, because if I don't get a straight, okay, let's rewind for a second. I'm going through the sales process with somebody. I reach the first kind of key issue. And if I don't get a straight answer from them there, we're not going I'm not investing any of my time anymore. And then there's what they call in sales, there's called like the takeaway, where you go, maybe you're not ready. So what we can do is, hey, let me do this. I can give you my information. When you are ready, why don't you reach out to me? Or let me email you some information. That's when you use that to your advantage. If I'm not getting commitment from you on step one, why would you go to step two?